it was a tough time for sure.
Wow.
But, sometimes you fall down, right? You fall down and you just go, why, what am I going to do? I don't know where to turn. And then you just get up. You can't lay down there for too long. You got to get up and press on because people need you. I felt like, well, I'm called to do this.
Wow.
I felt called after September 11th to help our service members out. And now I'm called to help my son. And that,
What an incredible, father moment, that you fought with him through all that. It's so inspirational for it, for sure.
it's just what you have to do. And thank God we had many, many blessings to keep us going and to keep us positive in the fight. And Mac was the biggest blessing of all because of the way that he dealt with it.
Welcome to the We Who Dad podcast. I'm Jeremy Carroll, joined by Robbie Bear, and we are joined today by the illustrious Gary Sinise.
Thank you so much for being with us.
No, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
You just have such an incredible history and story of so many amazing things that you've done. And I thought that maybe you could kind of start out just kind of telling how you got into Hollywood and maybe about if you were married at the time when you had your first acting gig. Did you have kids at the time? Kind of maybe tell us a little bit about your origin story in the film industry.
Well, I had started, I'll go back ways. So it's a while ago. I had started a theater company with my pals in Chicago called Steppenwolf Theater.
Oh.
And we got that started in the mid 70s. We were in a suburb of Chicago called Highland Park. That's where I met. It was through the theater company and through one of my great high school buddies named Jeff Perry. Jeff went to this suburb was Highland Park, Illinois, and Jeff and I met in high school doing plays, and then he went to Illinois State University, and we put a theater company together it was me and 8 people from Illinois State.
Wow.
And my wife, Moira, not at the time, of course, she was a part of that early collection of Steppenwolf Theater folks.
Wow.
John Malkovich was one.
Wow.
Laurie Metcalf, you may know,
Wow, yeah.
was one. I mean, it was a really good group of people. Joan Allen.
Wow.
Joan was nominated for 3 different Oscars for different things. A lot of good people in the company. Terry Kinney and Jeff Perry and I were the co-founders, and they all went to school together at Illinois State. Moira, my wife, she knew all those folks, and so she became an early member. And then that was in 1976. We got married in 1981.
Okay.
And a few years later, it was a few years, I started directing some plays that were doing pretty well. We would move them to New York City. John Malkovich and I did one called True West.
Wow.
By Sam Shepard. And that was the first play that we moved from Chicago to New York. We moved that in 1982. It was a big, big hit. Malkovich went off and became a movie star after that, got a lot of attention from that. And then we just moved one show after another, like every year for about 5 or 6 years. And I had directed that one, and I directed another one called Orphans. And Orphans was very popular. Remember Frasier, the show Frasier?
Yeah.
You might remember John Mahoney played Frasier's dad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
John was a member of our theater company, and we took this show to New York, and he did really well out of the show. He was really good in it. Started his movie and television career after that. And I, as a director, was getting a lot of attention, and some folks from Hollywood saw this play, and they had seen what Steppenwolf was doing. They invited me to come out to Hollywood and have a movie deal at Columbia Pictures.
Wow.
So my wife and I got married in 1981. In 1987, I decided to accept the deal.
Wow.
And it was a 2-year first look deal at Columbia Pictures. David Putnam was running the studio at that time.
Wow.
David had produced Chariots of Fire
Yeah.
and
Wow.
Killing Fields. He did some really good movies.
Yeah.
And he was asked to come and run the studio. And he saw this play, Orphans, and he offered me a directing deal at Columbia.
Wow.
So I decided to take it, and my wife and I moved out in 1987.
Can I ask you a question about kind of the theater days? Because that's such an interesting, I mean, what an incredible story of starting a theater company that launched so many important, talent, obviously, including yourself. But it's really interesting. Did you, would your wife go with you to New York every time that you moved the play over there? And what was it like even being like a husband in that season? Was it just like you guys worked at all times? How was it like being like did you get to see each other that much, or what was it like in the early days on that?
Well, we got married in 81, as I said. We got married while I was doing a play.
Wow.
So we had actually tried to get married, I think in 1979 at one point, and things fell apart. We broke up. And then we got back together in 81. We got married. And then the following year, Steppenwolf took its first play to New York, this one called True West.
Wow.
Moira came for the opening, but she was continuing to do plays at our theater in Chicago while I was in New York doing
Wow.
True West. We
Yeah.
were kind of, doing that Chicago, New York thing, and I was in the show for 6 months. She would come from time to time to visit and then go back to Chicago and do plays there. And so we were kind of juggling and balancing. And then, as I said, the next play I did after True West was 1984. We did a play called Balm and Gilead there. And then in 1985, we did this play that I directed called Orphans.
Wow.
So Moira and I this was an explosive time for Steppenwolf Theater.
Yeah.
We came on the scene very hot and heavy. We were really, people were really excited by the work we were doing. We got a lot of attention. Within a couple of years of starting to bring our plays to New York, we received the Best Regional Theater Award from the Tonys.
Wow. Cool.
And, I'm on stage at the Tonys. We had a play running in New York, this play, Orphans.
Wow.
And Tony Awards were that year. And, I was up there accepting an award for Best Regional Theater. So, that early 80s to mid 80s was a very explosive time.
Wow. Amazing.
And it did stress our relationships out a bit, because we were kind of all over the place. I was in New York doing Orphans. Then I went down to the Kennedy Center in DC, and I was doing a play down there.
Wow.
Moira was doing a play down there at the same time. We were just all over the place. Explosive time.
Wow. Do you feel like,
and that puts a strain on the relationship for sure.
Yeah.
did you feel like Hollywood kind of actually was kind of a relaxing period in a sense that it kind of made it a little, was it still kind of a fire time, or was it a little slower season 2 in that when you got pregnant with your first?
It was about a year after we moved to Hollywood that Moira got pregnant. We moved to Hollywood in 87, and I got, within a short amount of time, I ended up directing my first movie.
Wow.
Which was a movie called Miles from Home with Richard Gere.
Wow.
I put a bunch of Steppenwolf people in it. Laurie Metcalf was in it. Malkovich was in it. There's a bunch of people from my company. Moira did it. My wife Moira did a couple of scenes in it that I ended up cutting. That made things a little tricky in the relationship, but she understood. And then that was 87 that I directed that. And in 88, Moira got pregnant, early 88. And Miles from Home was actually accepted into the Cannes Film Festival.
Wow.
So in May of 1988, Moira was pregnant, kind of popping out here. And we went over to France and we're a part of the Cannes Film Festival.
Wow.
The Miles from Home with Richard. Richard Gere was there, and Kevin Anderson, who was also in it, was there. And we had a great screening at the Cannes Film Festival. Moira had the baby in November of 88.
Wow.
Our first child, Sophie. And we again, these were tricky times because I was starting to direct movies. I was getting some attention there. We as Steppenwolf ended up doing the Grapes of Wrath on
Wow.
Broadway.
Wow.
And I went to New York to do the Grapes of Wrath.
Wow.
I was still in Chicago, pregnant with our second child when we did that one.
Wow.
She was doing plays in Chicago while she was pregnant, and I'm in New York doing the Grapes of Wrath. It was a crazy time. We were having our babies, and we were doing a lot of theater and movie stuff.
It sounds like a magical time. I mean, did you, just last week we had a Green Beret on our podcast or whatever, and he was talking about actually he's I think, how many tours did he do? 13 or something? Or he did a lot. He did a lot of tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. But one of the things he said is that those things actually helped him kind of come up with a structure for that. Do you feel like it kind of helped you come up with any structure for your marriage or those early days because you're doing so much? Or do you think it just came together kind of later on how you dadded in it?
Yeah, it was a juggling act. I mean, it was a real juggling because you're juggling the work that you're doing. We're starting to have our babies. Moira is over in Chicago while I'm in New York. I mean, I'm traveling around. I ended up doing another movie after I finished The Grapes of Wrath. I ended up directing Of Mice and Men.
Wow. Amazing movie.
As a film.
Yeah.
It was a real balancing act, for sure. As we were starting our family at the same time that the career was starting to kind of take off. Forrest Gump came a few years later, and that exploded the acting career, into a kind of a new area, because it was a good movie seen by a lot of people, and I started to get offered more work, and the kids were little, and it was kind of a crazy balancing act for sure at that time.
Did you ever bring your kids with you on set or anything like that? Did they get to kind of see you doing what you do in it?
Yeah. There was a time where they were younger, and not necessarily, really getting embedded in school and, all of that. During that time, there were times where I would bring them all and they would be there until they got tired of being there, and then they'd go home. And, and sometimes, we went through a period of time where I would bring them and then we'd get tutors for them because they were in school.
Oh, wow.
And all that period of time was, when they were younger, like little, we could bring them easily and, bring some help along to help us while I was shooting and everything. But as they got older and more school, then we'd have to deal with tutors. We'd have to pull them out of school, and it got more difficult. So I just stopped doing that because I saw that was starting to be really disruptive in their lives, picking them up and moving them.
Yeah.
Every year somewhere to go on location with me just was very disruptive. And I think they struggled somewhat because of that, because they didn't have the consistency of kind of being in school all the time, which we recognize that it was not the best thing for me to bring them and get them a tutor and all that kind of stuff. Better to have them stay there and I just go off and do my jobs and come home.
Yeah. It's almost like it does feel in a way kind of like a deployment where you go off, you make the movie, and then you come back in a way through it.
Well, yeah, and I got used to that. And they would come for maybe a week or something and then go home, but not for the whole time anymore.
Yeah.
It's interesting because my grandfather was an actor in the 30s, and he had won the box office award, and then he went off. A lot of the actors went off to World War II. When they came back, it was hard to get work in Hollywood. As you know, Jimmy Stewart walked around for a year before he could get a job, and so my grandfather actually went to Broadway, and so he was on Broadway for 26 years. He did Broadway plays, and so my dad, who does send his regards to,
My best, please.
yeah, he would talk about like just even being behind backstage as they were practicing for the plays or whatever, and it's kind of interesting about that kind of context in there. Did you all move like to the LA area permanently as you were doing the movie thing, or did you stay in Chicago during that whole kind of season of time, or did you live all over in it?
No, during the New York theater period, we maintained our residence in Chicago. That's where we lived. That's where my theater was, Steppenwolf Theater and everything like that. And we would just go to New York and sublet some apartment and be there for however long the play was that was running, that I needed to be there. Moira did plays there too, during
Wow.
that period of time. But when we picked up, when I accepted the movie deal in Hollywood at Columbia, then we made the move. We rented a house in Sherman Oaks, and just a tiny little house. We rented a little house, moved all our stuff out. I had an office at Columbia for a couple of years. The deal that I had there was a first look deal. You know what that is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
For your audience, a first look deal is they have the right to see whatever you're doing first, right?
Right.
So if I find a project that I like that I want to do, I had to bring it to Columbia first, and they could say yes, we'll do it, or no. And I brought a few projects to them here and there during that period, but they didn't, it wasn't anything they wanted to do. And then I was free to go try and put it together somewhere else. And in exchange for the first look, they gave me an office, they gave me a little salary, and they paid for an assistant.
wow.
So I had a little office on the lot at Columbia. And that was kind of cool, go
That's
out
awesome.
to,
Yeah.
Hollywood. I have an office, a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Can drive through the gate and have my own parking space, all this stuff.
Yeah.
It was kind of different and new and something pretty cool. But I never did anything for Columbia. The movie that I said that I directed first was a project that was written. It was a first project by a writer named Chris Girolamo, who eventually did a movie called Mississippi Burning
Wow.
with Gene Hackman, and Willem Dafoe was in that. Good movie. The first thing that he wrote was this movie Miles from Home that I directed with Richard Gere.
Wow.
And that was being produced by a small company called Cinecom at
Okay.
the time.
Okay.
Cinecom there was a movie that came out just a little bit before in the 80s called A Room with a View.
Yeah.
A Room with a View, very well respected, highly regarded, had a great cast, was nominated for some Oscars, that kind of thing. Cinecom did pretty well off that movie, so they were financing this small budget movie called Miles from Home with Richard Gere. And I went to kind of went to work on that, did that. And we lived in Sherman Oaks, had a nice little house there. And then a year after we got there, Moira got pregnant. And we looked at each other and we said, let's have a baby. And then we went to work on it.
As you were having kids, did that affect the roles and projects that you were kind of presenting or anything like that? Did you kind of realize, oh, well, I should probably be thinking about the future here with these kids, or?
As they got older, yeah.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I was just taking what's the best role here? And I did some really good projects in the 90s when the kids were little. Our first child was born 88, then our son was born in 90, and then our youngest daughter was born in 92. And 90, I was doing The Grapes of Wrath on Broadway when Moira was pregnant with our son. He was born just a few months after I finished that show.
Wow.
And then after we did Of Mice and Men, Moira got pregnant with our third. So Mice and Men came out in October of 92. And our daughter was born in August of 92.
Oh, wow.
So Mice and Men came out, and then within months, I was auditioning for Forrest Gump, and I got that part, and that changed the career quite a bit. I did Forrest Gump, I did Apollo 13, I did a movie about Harry Truman called Truman, just a Truman life story. I did a miniseries about the life of Governor of Alabama, George Wallace, directed by John Frankenheimer, really great American director. I was getting some good things. Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage, movie called Ransom with Mel Gibson. I was getting some really good parts in the 90s. And I was just going with the flow, like what's the next best thing that's coming along? And I got some really good parts. Was getting a lot of attention during that period. But then the kids did start getting older, and I did start looking at the roles a little bit differently. Like I remember when I got offered Ransom, I had made Apollo 13 with Ron Howard, and we had a great time, and it's a great movie and all that.
Amazing movie. Yeah.
Ron's next movie was this movie with Mel Gibson called Ransom. It was a thriller, very suspenseful, kind of tension-filled thriller about a kidnapping. And I remember reading it, and I had small children at the time, and I just the whole story of the kidnapping just wasn't sitting well with me at all.
Wow.
And Ron offered me the part of the kidnapper.
Wow.
Oh man.
I read it and I said, gosh, Ron, I just don't think I can picture myself doing this role. I mean, I don't like this guy. I had young kids, and just the idea of the kidnapping just really wasn't setting well with me. So I actually passed on the movie. And this is Ron Howard.
Wow. Yeah.
Mel Gibson, Ron Howard. I mean, it was a big movie, but I couldn't picture myself in it. And then shortly afterwards, I started rethinking, what did I just do? I offered the co-starring role of the villain, in a Ron Howard, Mel Gibson movie, and I turned it down. Well, and then there was like a school parade where our kids were going to be in this little parade at the school. And I went to the parade to see the kids in the parade. And who is there but Ron Howard's producing partner, Brian Grazer?
Wow.
His kids are going to the school.
Wow.
And Brian comes up to me and says, "Hey, Gary, how you doing?" And I said, "Hey, Brian, I'm doing okay. How you doing?" And then I said, "Brian, what's that? What's going on with the movie? Did you find somebody to play that part?" He goes, "Well, actually, we're just about to talk to somebody about it. I'm not going to name who it was. I'll leave that on the cutting room floor. Well, we're just about to go out to so-and-so about this part." And then he goes, "Why? Why are you asking?" And I said, well, I've been thinking about it a little bit, is it still available? You know? Well, uh, it might be.
Wow.
Wow.
And so I got home,
Wow, the deal was
and
done at this kid's school.
Yeah.
within 5 minutes of getting home, I get a call from Ron Howard.
Wow.
And Ron goes, Gary, I got a are you interested in this part now?
Wow.
Well, Ron, I've been rethinking it quite a bit, and to work with you again would be really tremendous. And yeah, I'm interested. And there you have it. I got
Wow.
the
Look at that.
monthly part, started negotiating, and I went to work on it. And I mean, I think it was the fact that having young children, I just couldn't picture myself doing this villain part. He's a bad guy, and
Wow.
a little bit psychotic, and but then once I accepted it, of course you dig in,
Yeah.
and then it became really fun to
Wow.
play the bad guy and just kind of torture Mel Gibson for 2 hours and then get paid back at the end.
That's cool that it was like even the deal was done at the kids' school and stuff. And it's also a kind of a good lesson that if God wants you to have something, it kind of sometimes it comes back around anyway, in there.
Thankfully, I ended up at the kids' parade.
Yeah. So how did you kind of move into how did you get into doing all the stuff with the Gary Sinise Foundation? When did that start in there? And was there any kind of thought of like, I mean, I'm sure that your kids thought that was kind of awesome and inspirational too in it, but maybe you could talk about when did that kind of start in there?
Well, the Gary Sinise Foundation grew out of just a lot of stuff that came before it with regards to supporting veterans. I started helping our veterans out, in various ways. Helping nonprofits that were helping veterans, started helping them. Started doing that after September 11th. I had done some support work in the 80s and 90s after Forrest Gump. I started supporting our disabled veterans, our wounded veterans, because I played a wounded veteran. I started supporting in different ways. And then September 11th kind of just turned me towards service in a big way. And I wanted to do as much as I could to help people that were deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan and their families. So I started doing a lot of support work for many different nonprofits out there. The USO and the DAV, Disabled American Veterans, and one nonprofit after another, just trying to help them out. And after doing that for 10, 12 years, I just decided it was time to launch my own foundation. So during my kids' childhood, during the time when the kids were young, you can actually go to the Gary Sinise Foundation website, and you can click on the founder page, and you will see something listed there called volunteer service history. And it's a solid history of trips and volunteerism and events and all these things that I've been through, going all the way back to the 80s.
Wow.
I mean, on and on and on. And if you look through the period of, when my kids, 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, when my kids were young, I was gone a lot. I was gone doing a lot of support work for the foundation. I was shooting a television series, CSI New York, during that period. It was a very, very busy time, and it was a very good time because I was getting a lot of stuff done. I was really motivated to take action after September 11th. I wanted to help our service members out. And I was meeting too many families with deployed soldiers, and they're going through these long deployments and it's tough on them and everything. And I just wanted to help them. So I deployed myself. And, as a result, I missed a lot of things when my kids were young. But it all grew into the Gary Sinise Foundation that we have today, which is, we've raised over $500 million in the time that we've been around.
Amazing.
We've deployed those resources all over the place. We have multiple people working at the foundation, doing great things. And my family, my kids, they're all proud of that. You know, it was tough on them, but I think they're proud of, what I try to do, and they feel a part of it.
Amazing.
They feel a part of it. They sacrificed a lot. My wife sacrificed a lot of time with me, but she has Vietnam veteran brothers, and her sister was in the Army, married a Vietnam veteran. She remembers what it was like for our Vietnam veterans not to get any support when they came home. And I was motivated to try to make sure that our Iraq and Afghanistan veterans knew they were appreciated. And I just started going out and doing stuff, and it was making a difference. And she saw it was making a difference. And so she would tell our kids, your dad's not just off playing golf or going on a fishing trip or something. I mean, he's over in the desert in the war zone, or he's at some hospital.
Incredible. Yeah.
Dealing with
Amazing.
some banged up people, and he's doing good stuff. And my wife was always very supportive of that.
I feel like there's something so deeply meaningful about that, is that just seeing, your father do something that is so purposeful, that makes an impact. And my dad's given his life to nonprofit work, and it always meant so much for us too, growing up, that we knew that it mattered, what he did mattered. Wow, that's really very cool. I don't know how to fully transition, but I'd love to talk a little bit about Mac. This is the record that we have here, that we gave out actually at the Movieguide Awards to every attendee. Can you kind of tell a little bit of that?
Robbie, and I want to thank you for doing that. It was so nice that you liked the music enough to give it to all your guests at the awards. I mean, I know you wouldn't have given it out if the music was no good.
Yeah, no,
it meant a lot to me that you wanted to do that, and I hope people got it and really enjoyed it.
No, people were very touched by it, and I think it's just such a very powerful story, and even just like being a father through grief, and there, and I think the story itself, really touched me deeply. I mean, I am not a father through grief, but I had a mother who was on chemotherapy for 26 years, so I didn't even want to get choked up talking about it because it's a podcast, so I have to talk. But the thing is that I just know that it's such a hard thing, but I feel like it impacted our family actually for the better, if that's weird enough to say, that it was very meaningful to be able to drive my mom to the hospital every week as a high school student, kind of put things in perspective in it. But maybe you could talk a little bit about your son and kind of that story that's so richly meaningful, and even being a father through that.
Well, I mean, we all go through grief and loss, and it's just, it's suffering is a part of the human experience. It's something none of us escape. There's something that happens in all of our lives that's going to impact us in a profound way. You're probably never quite prepared for certain things to happen like that. Although in some ways, I think with all the veterans work that I did and all the hospital visits that, I've made to wounded service members and broken Gold Star families and all these things that I've been engaged with over the years, I think in some ways, it better prepared me for dealing with our own challenging cancer story. And as I say, of course, your mom had a cancer story that lasted a long time. I mean, that's a long time to be on chemotherapy, and to fight that long and to beat it for that long that's pretty amazing. We had a very rare cancer that was thrust upon us called chordoma. And it's so rare that there's maybe 300 people are diagnosed with it in the US per year.
Wow.
That's it. That's it. It's so rare. Um, it starts in the spine, either the base of the spine or the top of the spine, right under the brain.
Wow.
Um, and the tumor grows there. And these are very, very slow growing tumors that likely, in many, many cases have been there almost since birth. And they grow so slowly that you don't know it's there. And
Wow.
our son started to have pain in his tailbone, and we thought it was a bruise or a fracture or something. And he endured that pain for a number of years. I mean, it went on for a couple of years. He would even carry a pillow around with him, to sit on it because he thought he had this bruised tailbone that wasn't going to heal. And the doctors told him to do chemotherapy or to do physical therapy and take some muscle relaxants and stuff like that. And he kept trying to do that. And then we discovered that there was a tumor there.
Wow.
And it was a big tumor. And quite often they can go in and they can remove the tumor and they'll get it all. Like with other cancers, that they can go in, and 70% of the time with these 300 patients, they can go in and take it out and there's no recurrence. It doesn't come back. 30% of the time it comes back and spreads. And we got dealt that card.
Oh my gosh.
So all of a sudden you're in the world of oncology and radiation. And of course, with a cancer that is so rare that there's so few patients every year, of course, there's no pharmaceutical companies that are trying to develop drugs to fight a cancer that only 90 people a year are faced with, right? Metastatic chordoma is only, that's 30% of the time. So you're up to oncologists just trying to recommend different drugs to try.
Wow.
Thankfully, in our chordoma case, there was a young guy who had chordoma years ago, and he had the tumor successfully removed. But they said, we can't, it might come back. And he was like, well, what do I do if it comes back? Where do I turn? And he started searching for people that were doing research and development on chordoma. And he found one guy down at Duke in North Carolina who was doing some research on it. And he went down, knocked on the guy's door and said, I had chordoma. I want to volunteer to help you try to find some solutions.
Wow.
And this guy's name is Josh Summer, and he eventually started the Chordoma Foundation with a mission 24/7 to try to find a cure.
Wow, incredible.
To beat this cancer.
Wow.
He taught himself everything he could possibly teach himself about chordoma. I mean, he's like a medical guy who never went to medical school.
Wow.
And he's a brilliant young guy. And thankfully, the Chordoma Foundation was there in our case and in the case of all these other patients who have nowhere to turn, because they are on the cutting edge of finding all the latest research that people might be doing about chordoma. Who are the doctors that have become the experts in this cancer? We found an expert surgeon who did the operation on Mac, ended up doing, I think, 5 operations on Mac, because once they took the initial tumor out, it came back about 8 months later, and then it was spreading, and more tumors were forming on the spine, and he had to go in and take those out, fuse my son's spine. And I became like my son's battle buddy for sure. I was living with him in the hospitals. I was dealing with the doctors. I was dealing with the appointments. I was trying to find new drugs through the Chordoma Foundation, because you get one drug and they're going to try that drug, right? And you hope that they're going to find something to stabilize the tumor or start to kill it. But you know that if you don't see any signs of, the tumor slowing down, that you're going to have to go to another drug. And so I'm always way out, trying to be out ahead of the current drug that we're trying to try to find another drug. What's going to be our next thing to try? Mac tried 24 drugs in 4.5 years
Wow.
to try to find something that would
Wow.
kill the cancer. And I became I've talked about this before, but you're like kind of the air traffic controller or something like that. You're just trying to keep the planes from crashing and trying to keep everything in the air, keep flying, and help Mac so that he could have as many good days as possible, because the cancer was destroying his body.
Oh my gosh.
It was disabling to him. Eventually, he couldn't walk because the tumors had grown so much that it paralyzed him. He lost all feeling below the chest. In some ways, maybe that was a blessing, because there were so many tumors that if he would have felt them, it would have been, I mean, there were times where he wasn't paralyzed, where he was feeling those tumors pressing on nerves, and he was in such pain. It was awful. And just trying to find the pain medication to keep him out of pain was difficult.
Wow.
But the tumors kept growing and they kept spreading, and you could see them. I mean, he had a lot of tumors, and there were some that you could see. He had a big, giant tumor on his chest. He had a big one on his nose. If you look up Mac Sinise on YouTube, you will see videos of Mac in the studio recording this record. And there are videos of the recording sessions, and you can see him in his wheelchair, and you can see this big tumor on his nose that kept growing. It kept getting bigger. And so when you see these tumors getting bigger and you're trying every drug you can,
Wow.
and well, I don't see any shrinkage at all here. Nothing's getting smaller. In the front of your mind, you're thinking, okay, I'll ignore that. Let's go on to the next thing we got to do to fix it. And in the back of your mind, you know all too well that you're battling uphill against an incurable cancer with no drugs to fight it. So you got to keep perspective. There were times where I prayed to God over and over and over for the miracle. You're always looking for that miracle that's going to stop things and change the course of things, help our son get out of pain and whatnot. But, he was Mac was the center of everything that we were doing. I stopped my acting career in 2019 to just focus on how do I help my family through this stuff.
Wow.
I kept doing concerts for the Gary Sinise Foundation and stuff, but I didn't want to travel away for long periods of time doing a movie or something like that. And thankfully, I had a television series that did well, and I could afford to take the time off. But I just wanted to help Mac as much as I could. I wanted him to have as many good days as possible.
Wow.
So I thought about the cancer all the time. I thought about the doctors. I did all the scheduling. I did all that caregiver stuff that I felt like, well, I'm called to do this,
Wow.
I felt called after September 11th to help our service members out. And now I'm called to help my son. And my wife had been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer during this whole thing. And it was a tough time for sure.
Wow.
But, sometimes you fall down, right? You fall down and you just go, why, what am I going to do? I don't know where to turn. And then you just get up. You can't lay down there for too long. You got to get up and press on, because people need you. People need you, and you got to stay in the fight. Thank God we had many, many blessings to keep us going and to keep us positive in the fight. And Mac was the biggest blessing of all, because of the way that he dealt with it. And the last year of his life, he did these albums. And in some way, that the last year of his life he turned 33, in the recording studio with my band recording for this record right here that you've got there.
Wow.
And those videos are on his YouTube channel. They can be seen, and it's beautiful. And 2 months after his birthday, he died.
Wow.
In some ways, that last year was one of the best years of his life, no
Wow.
question about it.
Wow.
And now we have all this music. There are 2 records. That's part 1, and then there's Resurrection and Revival part 2, which is all music that I found after he died.
Wow.
Wow.
I found it all in his laptop, in his Dropbox file. I found all this music, and I called his producing partner and said, we gotta do another record. There's too much music, too much good stuff here.
Wow.
It's a sad story. It's a one in a gazillion cancer stories, of course, but the way Mac dealt with it so gracefully, and the smiles that I saw on his face in the hospital those last days when he showed people the videos on his phone of his music.
Wow.
And them reacting to it, and the smile that would come onto his face when they would see it, that's priceless. And that was beautiful. I know he was content and at peace,
Wow.
at the end.
Wow.
What an incredible father moment, that you fought with him through all that. It's so inspirational for sure.
It's just what you have to do. And, I mean, I miss my son more than I can articulate, of course.
But you'll see him
But I
again.
also feel so blessed to have had him in our lives, and so blessed to be able to share this music, Robbie. I mean, we've sold 8,000 of those records on the Gary Sinise website, and we're selling them every day.
Wow.
And Mac wanted the proceeds from those vinyl records to go to the Gary Sinise Foundation. So he continues to help us help our service members, and
It's amazing.
that's a beautiful blessing. I mean, it's so beautiful in so many ways.
Do you feel like I don't want to belabor it too much, but do you feel like your family as a whole kind of has come closer together now, even with your other 2 daughters, through that experience? Did it drive you as a family even closer?
We were always close, but I'm so proud of my daughters. I mean, the way they dealt with everything through Mac and losing Mac, January 5th, 2024, the funeral and all the stuff that goes along with that, burying our son, and they were so helpful and strong, and we're all heartbroken, we're all crying through it and everything, but our daughters are great moms. They've got, our daughter Sophie has 3 young children. Our daughter Ella has 2. The grandchildren were a beautiful blessing through the whole thing. And we just hold each other tighter. And I would do absolutely anything for my kids, There's, I sometimes I'll hear these people that have had great careers, great blessings, and then they say, "No, I'm not going to do anything for my kids. They're going to have to earn it all themselves, just like I did, and go out there and do it." My life is going to end at a certain point. I'm not going to go to the pearly gates thinking I stiffed my kids. My CSI New York money, I mean, I want to help them to have a good life now. I don't want them to wait until I'm gone and then they get some stuff and, their kids are grown and all that. I want to do whatever I can. My son had we put away a savings account for each one of our children when they were young, and I was building my career and, making more money as time went on and stuff like that. So we started just setting aside a little bits here over a certain period of time. So each one of our children had a little something that we had put away for them. And I never wanted to have these kinds of conversations with Mac. Like, what do you do if this happens, Mac? Or what do you want me to do if that happens? Or I didn't want to go there, right? I didn't want to have those conversations. I was focused on what are we going to do to cure this thing? How am I going to fight this cancer? How am I going to get rid of it to save my son? And so I even those last days in the hospital, until the very last couple of days, I never accepted that we were not going to get through this because we'd been to the hospitals many times, stabilize our son and bring him home.
Yeah.
My mindset that last time was that's what we're going to do. So I never wanted to have those what if conversations with my son. But there was one time where I asked him about his account. What would you ever want to have happen to your account? He produced the first record. He spent the money out of his account to produce that record that's sitting right there. He hired the musician, his buddy Oliver helped him produce the record. Mac financed it. And he paid all the musicians and paid for the studio and paid for the, this and that to get done. So he had the money, he had a nice pot of money that had built up over several years, and he had invested wisely. And the only time I really asked him about something like that was, what would you ever want to have happen to your account? And I wanted to know because I just wanted to know. And he said he wanted it to go to his sisters.
Oh,
And so,
it's amazing.
after he died,
Wow.
the money was split between the two sisters, and that has helped them quite a bit. And that, I would do anything for my daughters and their kids and anything like that. I'm grateful that I have them. They have been strong and beautiful and wonderful. And my wife is amazing. And she's had many, many health problems herself and continues to have those problems. So going back to work, while I'd like to replenish the kitty, because more is going out than coming in these days. But going back to work will have to be a very special thing, because being around my wife and my daughters and the grandkids and everything, that's the most important thing. In some ways, there were times where I wished I'd sat with Mac more and just talked to him about stuff. I wish he'd played me some of the music that I found later on and shared some of that stuff with me. But so if I have any regrets, it's maybe just, when somebody's gone, you start thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
Why didn't I ask them this, or why didn't we talk about that? Or, gosh, I wish I would have known how they felt about this and that. There are things that I surely wish that I'd asked Mac about.
But you were an amazing father, and you'll see him again. You'll get to spend eternity with him. So,
yeah, I think he's the fact that his music is being embraced the way it is. I don't know if you saw this recently, but Forbes, you can look this up on Forbes online. Just about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, Forbes Online did a story about Mac and his 2 albums.
wow.
At that moment in time, when they did the story, Mac's 2 albums, Resurrection and Revival and Resurrection and Revival Part 2, were among the top 10 most downloaded records in America on iTunes.
Wow. Amazing.
Now
Praise God.
that's a constantly shifting list, right?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
every day somebody's downloading something else.
Yeah.
But look at who's on the top. You can look up that article and
Yeah.
who's in the top 10. It's like Blake Shelton,
Yeah.
Morgan Wallen,
Yeah.
big stars.
Yeah.
At one point, Mac had dropped to number 29 on the top 30.
Wow.
And he was right in between Lady Gaga at 28 and Britney Spears at number 30. And it's like Lady Gaga, Max Sinise, and Britney Spears. And I mean, it was just the most amazing thing to see that his music, we don't have a record label.
Yeah.
We don't have a big, machine behind us, to promote the record or anything. I've just done some interviews and talked about it, and people have gone to his YouTube channel and discovered the music and downloaded it and bought the record. And to have this happening right now is just beautiful. The music is great, but I think people are resonating with Mac as a person, which is really neat.
The legacy carries on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this time that you get to spend with us, and what an incredibly powerful story that you told us. Thanks for being an amazing father, and thanks for teaching dads on how to be better dads. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we get to maybe do this again some other time too. So thanks for being on We Who Dad.
I'd be happy to, Robbie. Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. Thank you for sharing the music with your audience, and God bless.